I've got a question for you. What do you think is the most surefire way to get people to behave the way you want them to? Here's my answer. You scare them to death. And that's really how the Democrats roll in the 21st century, citing so-called threats ranging from climate change to right-wing insurrection, or maybe the healthcare crisis. The list just goes on. Of course, the strategy of cultivating fear isn't new. As H.L. Mencken said last century, the whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed and hence clamorous to be led to safety by menacing it with an endless series of hobgoblins, all of them imaginary. There seems to be some discrepancy as to whether Mencken said all of them imaginary or most of them imaginary. Given the current circumstances surrounding COVID-19, he would have been smarter to say most. It seems almost everyone knows someone who has died of this disease, though most of those who have died have been elderly or affected by underlying health problems such as obesity or diabetes. Some of us, including me, are grieving for friends and family and even beloved entertainers who have died. I say all that to say, I don't mean to make light of the impact of this virus. But since the vaccines came along, the government has been working overtime to make sure everyone gets the jab, or in most cases, 2 or more jabs. Radio ads produced by the CDC called Delta the new, more dangerous variant, and essentially pointing to a new hobgoblin. Even though we don't have evidence that it's more deadly, it's just more easily transmissible. But hey, if the Delta variant isn't deadlier, the next variant to come along surely will be. But the ads say that vaccines offer us our best chance to get back to normal. Now listen, I know a lot of folks are skeptical about the vaccines. I can't say that I blame you given the irresponsible rhetoric of our leaders. But based on the research that I trust, I believe they are effective, and incredibly so. That said, at this point, it's been made clear that the vaccines are not the key to getting back to normal. Getting the authoritarian, petulant tyrants currently residing in the White House and Congress, that's the only way we're going to get back to normal. A couple of weeks ago, there were 15 academic studies showing the superiority of natural immunity. And the latest out of Israel shows natural immunity to be far more effective than that produced by the vaccines. But it doesn't matter to the apostles of Dr. Anthony Fauci, who testified of the threat posed by the unvaccinated, who now must be fired from their jobs and generally treated as lepers. And that is no matter what the reason for their personal choice not to get the shot. On Saturday, one of my writers went to the home of someone who had graciously allowed her to use his striking interiors for a photo shoot. He's probably in his 50s, not obese, with no evident underlying health problems. She had met him a couple of times before, but he didn't know her politics and certainly didn't know that she wrote for me. Probably that was wise not to tell him. I'm sure their later conversation would have gone even more disastrously if he had told her that. His first question when she walked in was, "How are you feeling?" As in, have any COVID symptoms? She responded that she's feeling great and that he doesn't need to be concerned since she'd already had COVID. He asked anyway if she'd been vaccinated. When she said no, because research shows that vaccines are not at all necessary for someone who has natural immunity to COVID, he backed away from her and exclaimed, "What? You mean you're not vaccinated?" Of course, she said no, and pointed out that it looks as though natural immunity might be way better than the vaccines, at which point he interrupted and asked with horror if she was an anti-vaxxer. My writer thought he was going to kick her out after he said, "I believe Dr. Fauci, and I don't think I can have an unvaccinated person in my house." Fortunately for her sake, what the homeowner decided to do instead of banishing her was leave the house himself with his wife, and they went out to a restaurant for dinner where presumably there were people who hadn't been vaccinated taking off their masks to eat. And they didn't come home until after she had left. This is such an incredibly irrational expression of fear. Now, I'm sure you've seen images on TV, of course, Democrats screaming at the sky when Trump got elected, and leftist women donning handmaid's tale garb out of genuine terror of what he was going to do to women's rights. But of course, these women had nothing to fear but fear itself. Their fear was based on nothing. They had been brainwashed to be terrified of Donald Trump. So it is now with the campaign against the unvaccinated. They are those people. Whatever the reason for this one-size-fits-all insistence on everyone getting these vaccines, is obviously not to get back to normal. Attempting to force 100 million Americans to engage in a medical procedure against their will does not and will not get us back to normal. It only gives us tyranny. Unfortunately, it seems that a lot of Democrats are okay with that. But if you're not okay with that, one small way that you can help fight it is to subscribe to this channel and click on the notification bell. Be sure to follow that up with a like and a comment about how wonderful this video was. And then be sure to join me on Friday for a live stream. And if you want more of my takes on the news of the day, you sure should sign up for my newsletter at MikeHuckabee.com. They'll be delivered to your email inbox twice a day, and it's absolutely free. That's it for this edition of The Breakdown. I'm Mike Huckabee.